We're here for another Insight conversation as part of the ATL Education Expo, and I'm really excited to chat with Monique Nunnally, a friend of mine who's the Director of Community Engaged Learning at the New School of Atlanta, as well as the founding director of TeachX. It's a really cool application and platform for teachers to engage with professionals. Hey, Monique, thank you so much for giving me the time, especially at the end of a long week.
Hey, nice to see you, Ian. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And I know you have a lot of strong opinions and a lot of great ideas. So I'm really excited to chat with you about this. The point of these conversations is to really get a sense for how people experience education here in Atlanta, and also where should we take it in the future. And so I'd love to start by just asking you, how did you first get into teaching, and what have been your roles along the way? Have you been in the classroom and school buildings?
Thank you so much for asking the question. I got into teaching and education, started with a small program at Westlake High School where I was trying to get professionals connected with students at Westlake, which is my alma mater. And then I was like, oh, I really love this. Kids built a computer. They built 4 and donated 2 of them to actual Westlake High School students, which was really awkward. I'm not going to say that. When the students actually received the computer that they built, because the principal made it public. It was weird. But it really helped me get excited about kids learning from professionals.
Yeah.
And then I joined Teach for America in 2015, which really put me on a different kind of journey with students in marginalized communities at Title I schools, really understanding and learning about their struggles. Actually attending a Title I school and teaching at one are 2 different things, and really getting connected in my first year to 2 students who really inspired a lot of my work because they went to jail. They actually were convicted of armed robbery. And the week before they turned themselves in, I talked to them directly, these 2 young boys, and they were like, school ain't for me. Like, what's here? You know, y'all ain't doing nothing. And it really struck a chord with me and pushed me to continue to do deep work when I'm in the classroom, to really unpack how are we making those connections with and for kids so they feel purposeful. And then I moved on to Carver High School, where I worked again in a Title I space, teaching English and working with young people. And when I kept telling kids they would be an author at the end of the semester, they were like, what? And then they wrote a book and we published it. And no one believed that they could publish a book.
Yeah.
And in Atlanta public schools, I don't even think, like, I sent it to everybody. And they were just like, what? And it was just such a shock to see these young people who I feel like people had counted them out, become their own heroes in their own stories and write it down and publish it. And so those things inspired me to say, if we give kids the tools, if we provide them the network, because we know that this world is not absent our network. Opportunity needs a network. It needs relationships. It's relational, how we connect with each other, how we extend opportunity. And so for me, that has been my journey over the past 5 years as I've trickled into a partnership role as the director of partnerships at the New School, is that I want children, young people, especially young people of color, to have relationships and network and community to ensure that that's how we build an equitable space.
Right.
And that's kind of been my trajectory.
That's amazing. I definitely want to go back to that original story you mentioned, but this is a theme that's coming up a lot in these conversations, is this idea that like the walls of the schools are too thick at this point. Like we need to blur the lines and get more of like real people, real application, real professionals into the building just to contextualize education. And then to your point, which I don't think people talk enough about, and you said it so well, is like, we need to help people build networks, because not everybody grows up with a network or in a community that fosters them or cultivates them. And it's so powerful. I mean, you and I are both similar ages in our career. Like we found most of the positions through people we know, relationships you build because they learn who you are and what you're great at. So I think that's such an amazing point. We'll come back to that. I want to go back to the first story you told about building those computers at Westlake. Can you say a little bit more, like what happened there? Like when you say they built computers, what do you actually mean? Like what happened?
So we went to communities and schools And they have a site coordinator there, Miss Desdemona. She retired.
Okay.
And Miss Desdemona said, well, I got some babies and we need to win the communities and schools challenge. They have a service challenge every year. And
Okay.
they was donating bikes and food. I said, I got some way better, Miss Desmond. I got way better. I just graduated grad school and wanted to volunteer my alma mater. And
Mm-hmm.
so Miss Desdemona said, okay, well, I can connect you because I know, your husband works with computers. And I was like, yeah, he does. She said, we got some old computers. Can we work on those? And so she connected me with communities and schools, and we tore the computers apart, me and my husband, and we brought the components of the computer to the students, and we put them all back together again and upgraded the software on them.
Very cool. And then they gave them away.
And then we gave them away to her church and and two students at the school, which one was living in a hotel and his dad sent the computer back. So we gave the other one to another church member she knew because they couldn't keep the desktop computer at the hotel.
Oh, that's tough. But
yeah,
it's interesting that like your trajectory seems to have always included this theme of like, how can I bring other people in the building, right? Like, how can I get folks in here? Tell me more about that. And I think it relates to this we need to build relationships and community and networks for kids. Like, tell me more about that. Why is that such a need, and why are we not getting into schools right now, do you think?
So my work with TeachX specifically is about building ecosystem. And I think the reason we're not building ecosystem is that the schoolhouse has always been designed to be a closed system, not an open system. Right. And it is designed that way in order to get to its original roots, which is to create culture of compliance and obedience in society and to really be the moral compass of our community. It was never designed to be the 21st century space that we needed it to be, to really prepare kids for the workforce and the future of work that we are at now. Compliance was needed for motors and your assembly lines. You didn't need a network to reach there. But now, in order to move up economically and to have a more economic, like an equitable economic stasis for children and for adults, we need networks, we need relationships. This is how we navigate. We need a whole village. And I think the reason the village is not able to show up, number one, they don't know how. They don't know how to lean in. Where is the entryway? Who do I talk to? Who are the gatekeepers? So when I call a school, I get the secretary. Is she the business operations person? Is she also doubling as the executive assistant to the principal? What other hats or roles does he or she have? And mostly it is a she. Let's be clear. And if it's a she, she's doing all of these things, and she cannot also kind of navigate all of these different people and making sure they feel fulfilled in their volunteerism or their interest in coming into the school. So I think we're also not logistically set up to have people in our space, and we weren't purposed as a schoolhouse to have community partnerships. Even PTA says Parent Teacher Association. It does not include community. So there's no lens for how we do community work because it was never purposed or infrastructure created to do that in the first place. So that's kind of where we created TeachX as a mobile platform to be that logistics tool to build the infrastructure.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. You hit it right on the head. I've thought a lot about this before, and I think you said it so well. Schools were not designed for partnerships, right? They were not designed to handle them, cultivate them, utilize them. And so, what are most of the partnerships we see? It's big companies come in and donate a bunch of computers or something, or like, stuff like, or they come in and do a one-off mentoring day where we all know nobody has a mentor for only a day. That's not how mentorship ever works. And yet we continue to do this stuff. And so, I would love to hear more about TeachX and also what you've seen works on trying to bring people into the school building. Like, how can that process, people who want to do that, and enterprising teachers or administrators who want to do that? What are some things that you found, hey, this usually works when you bring someone from the outside in, you need to do X, Y, and Z with them?
Oh, that's a great question. As a director of community engaged learning at the new school and the founding director of TeachX, I literally get to experiment on what does that look like.
Right.
And that has been a very rewarding experience, especially in COVID. What I would suggest, if you're interested in getting partnerships in your space and you do not have a director of partnerships in your school, is start with, and you're enterprising teachers, start with your networks. They're always tried and true. You know your network. So LinkedIn, and just start texting them and say, hey, do you know somebody who does what? And then start documenting, because we want to replicate. This is the issue. This is the moment we miss. We email them, we text them, they come in for a day, but we fail to document so we can share out and replicate for best practices for other children. You cannot be a standalone teacher and be amazing all by yourself, and kids get amazingness in grade 3, in grade 4 they get nothing. So it's our duty to make sure we're passing it along so we can have a grade 1, 2, 3, all the way through 12. Everybody has an amazing teacher. So when you find that contact, document in what capacity did you engage with them, and share that information along. If there were formative assessments that were created with it, if there were rubrics made to assess, and clear guidance to the professional as to what you need of them, a scope of work. And that could be a three-pronged, this is the learning objective, this is the activity, this is where you fit in. And I would start small, start with a speaker series. Those are very easy. We have a speaker series for our seniors at the new school, and literally I put a call on next door. Hey, anybody want to teach kids online, not in person, need background checks, but online, how to change a tire, write a check. I got 20 different text messages on next door.
Amazing.
And I say that because people want to just talk and share, and you have to create the space, but give them very clear guidance on how they can lean in. What is the time commitment and expectation? How many students would they be engaging with? And 1 to 2 deliverables that kids will be delivering as a result of the work they're doing with you.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I think a lot of times you assume you want to be as flexible as possible with someone volunteering, but so many times, like, adults are pretty terrified of going back into schools in front of kids, right? Like, because, you know, we all remember school because we remember it in the way we experienced it, like as nervous teenagers or little kids. And so when you think, oh, I don't walk in front of a high school group of students, you either go in with too much confidence and you don't realize how perceptive kids are, or you go in terrified because you're like, I don't know, I'm going to be embarrassing in front of the kids. They're not going to think I'm cool. Like, and so I think, to your point, like giving a very clear set of expectations. It's like, hey, here's when you should arrive. Here's what you should wear. Here's what we're going to ask you to do. And that's it. And just like, keep it simple. I think that makes so much sense. And it's amazing that you reached out through Nextdoor and got a bunch of respondents. What do you think that says about people in general?
I think, so we built our mobile app first, right? And I was like, yeah, people are ready to download our app and they're ready to go and teach X. But I was like, wait, we first need to just go where they are. So let's first start where they are. And what I've learned is if you start with where people already are, then they are so willing to share. People in this space want to pour into children. They want to share. Now you need to definitely screen what they're sharing before they get in front of children. But people are ready to share and love on children, especially now in COVID. They're concerned that kids are missing some really important things, and they really want to make sure kids feel whole and feel like they have a community and a village behind them.
Yeah. And you keep referencing this village, proverb we all know, it takes a village to raise a child. And I've always found it interesting because we say that so much in education, right? And I think we all agree with the sentiment, but we forget that when we say it takes a village to raise a child, we don't mean it just takes the teacher, the parent, and the student themselves. We mean the village, everybody in that, even whoever is saying it, right? And so to your point, I think it's about like showing people the way, right? Like most professionals, most adults have experiences, skills that can be shared and are valuable. Now it's like, can we build the bridge for them? Can we create the doorway to make this possible? What do you think when we think more largely about systems and like the school system itself? Is there any sort of structural changes that you think, hey, long term, we should really be thinking about if we want partnerships and people to have a more active role in what schools do for students? are there things that we could be doing differently from a structural standpoint? Like should there be a director of partnerships and community engagement at every school or some other thing like that?
Yes, I do think we need systems. Originally when we made TeachX, I was like, yeah, all teachers gotta do is go in the app. But then when I became the director of community engaged learning, I was like, wait, I have to do the HR. I have to do the contracting if they become a vendor and need payment. They might need a background check done. And so someone is managing and monitoring background check and the results of the background check.
Right.
Someone needs to ensure that there's continuing training for any volunteer that'll be long-term with students. And so there's another piece of human resource management that teachers cannot do. And so we need to build in the infrastructure, and the system needs to support making sure that's a part of our schools, and that it's not just they're going to donate food or they're going to plant trees, but how will kids and teachers interact on a very fundamental practical level with partners. And I don't know if that's being thought about. Another piece of this situation, I think, is we're going to have to really rethink who can teach. TeachX, the X stands for this infinite possibility, but also this unknown variable of who is the teacher, who can be teachers, whose knowledge is valuable in this new information economy. Sure. And I think we're going to have to take a long look at this idea, and I know people are going to be a little edgy about this, but this idea of the career teacher. I know I said it. I got it out of my mouth. Yeah. But I think that there is some challenge there where we're seeing that the bulk of teachers are now, 5 years or less in the space. Sure. And your career teachers are becoming far and few in between because they jump between different professions. And right. I'm not saying that is a norm that should be acceptable across the board for everyone. But I will say that I think that as we see professions become more transient and people have different skill sets they can bring to the space, we're going to have to create HR systems and licensing systems, micro licensing systems that allow for teachers to and community members to teach flexibly. So maybe you're coming in for an 8-week session to teach web development. Right sure. Now, we've been sitting on a certification in the state of Georgia for 2 years that has not moved a budge because no teacher wants to go back and get the certification. They right. don't want to go get the endorsement. And so we're sitting here saying we won't offer web development or computer science to students who want it, but we can't even get the training to the teachers because teachers are unwilling to say, I'm going to go back and get the endorsement. Right. So do we just not offer it, or do we say, hey, you work at Google or General Assembly, you understand how computer science works. Would you be willing to teach a 12-week course temporarily to staff this course? And maybe it's co-taught, or co-managed with a licensed supervising teacher, as we see in the counseling profession, where counselors can work independently under the licensure of someone else. But we're going to have to make those bridges happen and stop just saying we're going to offer math, science, English, and that's it. Right. There are going to be so many other fields of information our children need that we cannot provide through traditional teaching models and training prep programs. So systems need to say, okay, we can micro credential you. You can take this course here. We can give you some classroom management and then some training in classroom management. And you can teach a 12-week course or 8-week course on this given topic for this period of time. And when that skill set is no longer needed, we can scale it back down. But we're going to have to get more agile in how we think about our schoolhouse community. And what is the schoolhouse? Where does the learning happen? Right. And it happen anywhere with a community of anybody's. And that is why we call ourselves TeachX, because we hope one day we will get to that vision where our neighborhood coder is teaching in a class, didn't give up their $50,000 job or $80,000 job, but right. they have something to offer in that building that is powerful and needed. And maybe they took a sabbatical because they got paid to do it and came and taught our students. That's how the village can lean in, but we got to get creative.
Yeah, I mean, I love everything you just said, and I'm going to build on it because I think you also talked about we need to get more flexible around HR and teaching also because the teacher shortage is a big problem right now, and it's only getting bigger, right? And I think I read that the applications to teacher preparation programs have dropped 30% over the last 10 years. So we know nobody's really super interested in teaching right now because of how awful we make it. And then on the flip side, the generations of teachers that have been supplying us so far, they're retiring. A lot of teachers aren't staying. And so you're absolutely right. We have holes to fill. And I think the way you put it made so much more sense, right? Like there's this urge to say, oh, okay, kids need to learn coding. So let's have the teachers go get a certification in teaching coding and then teach the kids. In reality, to your point, there's so many new industries and skills out there. Wouldn't it just be easier to get some of those folks to learn some of the fundamentals of teaching, which is the unifying force here? And then I think your point's right, spot on. Like the teacher can be that conduit, right? Teachers, I think people misunderstand what skill set teachers have. They think it's about, oh, the teacher knows calculus really well. Okay, that teacher learns calculus over time and probably knows it well, but a teacher's real skill is around breaking down concepts, chunking it out, figuring out ways to engage people in the learning process. And that, to your point, I think makes so much sense working with somebody who's a professional and says, hey, I can help turn your skill and expertise into a digestible, 8-week, 12-week, whatever it is kind of course. And so I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about TeachX, how it works. And, if an educator is watching this, like what way they might engage with it.
Nice. Well, just to let you all know, TeachX is a edtech platform that really supports our teachers in training and learning how to create authentic learning experiences. So we have a fellowship that we will be launching in the summer. So if you're interested in being one of our fellows, it comes with a stipend. And we really walk through the fundamentals of creating these authentic learning experiences with professionals and your students. Because this is the only way we get there is teaching our teachers how to create these experiences. So we have a fellowship program. We also have an online web platform that allows you to see online courses from these professionals to learn new skills if you want to skill up and level up, because you want to make sure your tools are just as sharp as they can be when you're going in the classroom on new cutting edge technologies, on new tools. If you want to learn a new skill just to earn some extra money, like photography or graphic design, we want you learning those things. So we're not relying on our CTAE teachers, that you would go to and say, hey, I want to do an interdisciplinary project. Maybe you learn it and you put that deliverable into your summative assessment. But you can't tell a kid, go make a website to show off this history lesson if you didn't teach them how to make the website. That's not fair. So if you want to create these amazing summative assessments and performance assessments, then you probably want to go learn the medium that you're asking children to create in. If you want them to make an infographic, do you know how to make an infographic? And so our professionals and creatives are going to be teaching teachers how to make an infographic. Very simple. Here are the steps. And then you can also use our mobile app to connect with them in real time and say, hey, I did see your video, but I had a few questions. Can you help me with them? And hopefully the goal, again, is you're building these authentic experiences alongside our partners in our community and ultimately your students. And that's what we're here to do. Give you the ecosystem you need to really build the experiences, because learning is an experience. It's not transactional. So I want teachers to really think about what experience, from the moment kids walk into your classroom to the moment they leave, what experience are you creating in those 50, 75, or 90-minute blocks that lets a kid know that they are getting some valuable tools that affirm who they are and really level them up to the next level to prepare them for what's next. And if we're asking ourselves that question and you just pull some off of Teachers Pay Teachers, no shade, right? Is that really creating an experience with children? How often are we doing that? And so if you are saying, I don't really do that a lot, or I do that all the time, but I want to get better at it, come and talk to us. We want to build with you and build this community up. And so I'm asking teachers, if you want to be a fellow, please come. There is a stipend involved for the summer. And please just check our website at www.goteachx.org.
Right. I think, I mean, I feel like what you're saying resonates with anybody who teaches. It's like you want to make authentic learning experiences happen. You want to apply the skills you're teaching kids, right? And oftentimes you just don't know where to start with that kind of stuff. Like, and what sounds like is you guys are offering that way, right? You want to apply, the kids always learn better when they apply the skills you're teaching them. Like, so if you're teaching them, you know, how to make an infographic, obviously having them actually do it is much better than just talking about it or thinking about it. And I think, I mean, this just sounds like if anyone who's listening to this has ever thought, I want a more engaged in learning experience, I have no idea what to do from that point forward. It sounds like TeachX is where you should start because you guys are super willing to engage, discuss, talk about it. And I know from my own teaching experience that that's usually all you need. You need somebody to be like, hey, this is actually possible. Here are some ways you can do it. Right. Otherwise, you get caught up in like the sort of survival cycle of teaching, where it's like I just gotta get to the end of the day, to the end of the week, and this year especially. So you've already shared a lot of thoughts about the future of education, but I'd like to ask you explicitly as sort of our last question: when you think about the future of education and you imagine the year 2050, what do you think education should look like by that time? So about 30 years from now, what do you think it should look like for students and for teachers?
So, in like within TeachX's theory of change, we truly believe that by 2050, students are really self-directed. Teachers are operating as facilitators. Um, they are, I mean, really only in primary years are they really hands-on on an as-needed basis. But as they matriculate throughout their years, they will gain more agency in being self-directed learners. And in the year 2050, we imagine that the micro credentialing will be more uh, prevalent in society, and you will not need a 4-year degree. You can go get micro credentialed for the things you need. You're very clear on how to go about doing that, and also work will be will be decoupled from money, right? So this is the key for me: is once we decouple labor and wages, then we can think of learning in a more dynamic way that is long term and lifelong. The reason people think they learn right now is so they can get a job to earn wages. But I believe in 2050, we're going to start like stop saying college career ready. That'll be a dead term. It'll be dead. I mean, it's gonna be dead. And so if we decouple wages and we let people just start learning for creativity's sake, then by 2050, all children will just be making things. Now, I believe in 2050 because we're only in 2021. I do think poverty will still be here because we're still going to subscribe to the tenets of capitalism. I mean, I don't think that in 20 years, 30 years, we're going to tell ourselves we're going to leave that behind. So poverty is still going to be a staple. But I do think that we're going to see upper echelons in developing countries and countries that are more established, like America. And you didn't, I don't know if you were specifically talking about America or the world, but I do think we're still going to be struggling globally with how do we provide education to global spaces that are still developing. But in very established and developed economies, I think that we're going to see children and teachers just learning because they want to learn. And we're going to see this idea of 40-hour work week go away. And once you see the 40-hour work week go away, schools can now shift their focus from being a childcare facility to actually now digging into the curiosity and the interests of people and what makes you tick. And we can get to self-actualization. But until we decouple how we see learning as a tool to get to money, and as long as it stays coupled in that way, learning can't break the fourth wall, right? It can't really be the Einstein moment. Like, I'm really experimenting for experimentation's sake, because we've commodified and the grind culture has commodified learning. And so I think in 2050 in developed countries, either grind culture is going to go crazy and we're all going to just be working our butts off and only learning stuff to make money, or we're going to go in the opposite direction where we're learning because we care, we want to change things, we want to transform societies, we have a civic minded space that cares about humanity and people and developing technology that is human centered. So I think we're just either going to see like either or, right? In established nations, we're either going to be like super crazy working all the time and got every resource we need, but we never happy, right? And then that's in our schools too. There are going to be more tests, there are going to be more this, or we're going to like decouple all of that and let learning be for learning's sake. And students are going to explore, they're going to be curious. We're going to have partners in our space. Kids are going to be apprentices at 7th and 8th grade. I mean, it won't be this like unicorn when you see somebody in the 8th grade talking to Google, you know?
Right.
It will just be a normed thing 30 years from now if we really make the right decisions in this moment about how we see the collective village ability, not just them stepping up, right? But their ability to access and help in meaningful ways. Not like let's plant a tree together, but like let's build a robot together.
Yep.
You know? So we gotta capitalize on this Zoom moment where you can zoom into the class and really leave an impression.
Right.
And this is our moment to do that, or we go to the left and we don't make those gains and we stay where we are.
I love that. I mean, so much of that is profound. And people forget that if you imagine that everybody could be a genius in waiting, and we just need to figure out how to unlock more of them, right? Like that's what you were alluding to. And I'm 100% behind you on that. Monique, this has been really awesome. Again, this is Monique Nunnally, Director of Community Engaged Learning at the New School of Atlanta, as well as the founding director of TeachX. For those interested in realizing a lot of this vision, definitely go to goteachx.org and get involved with them. But Monique, this has been super awesome. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you so much for taking the time and making the space and platform for this to be shared. Thank you.
Absolutely.